Welcome to How to Uplevel Your Online Yoga Teaching Career. My name is Ashton August, and I am so excited to have you here. Thank you very much for joining me in this Season 2 of Business Bootcamp series brought to you by beYogi. I'm really looking forward to sharing this 3-part virtual workshop series with you because we get to deep dive how best to facilitate an online yoga class in 3 parts. Now for today, we are going to focus specifically on best practices for teaching an online yoga class. And what I love the most about this workshop series is whether you are a brand new online yoga teacher and you're getting ready to film your first online yoga class, or if you have been teaching online yoga for a while like myself, regardless of where you are on that spectrum, you're going to find some new insights and takeaways to really support and uplift and help you uplevel your online yoga teaching career. Now, before we get into this first class, I'll begin by a little introduction of who I am and why I'm here today to teach you this exact topic. Now, as I mentioned, my name is Ashton, and I am the founder of YogiApproved.com. We are an online yoga and wellness magazine that I created back in 2015. Now, pretty much right away, we began creating content, which is how I first stepped into the online filming world. And shortly thereafter, in 2017, we added Yogi Approved classes to the family. Yogi Approved classes, or YA classes, is our online yoga and fitness membership platform. So since 2017, I have been filming classes myself, as well as producing content led by other incredible teachers from around the world. So as the content director for not just Yogi Approved, but also YA classes, I have produced and worked for years in creating the best online content possible. And I'm really excited to share what I have learned with you today. I have also been teaching yoga for over a decade, and I am so passionate about online yoga as well as supporting yoga teachers just like you in their journey and career of teaching yoga. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, as a reminder, for this portion of our workshop, I will be giving you information. So please feel free to get comfortable, grab a piece of paper or something to take notes with, and allow this information to absorb. And so think about any questions or insights or key takeaways that you have as we go through this information. Feel free to revisit it, to connect with me afterward, and do whatever it is you need to do to really support and uplift and, of course, up-level your yoga teaching journey. I'm really excited, so let's just dive right in. Okay, so to start off today's class, we are going to discuss how important it is to make your students feel seen. So number 1 in our workshop lecture today is how to make your students feel seen, valued, and included. This is so important in any yoga class, but particularly when we're dealing with an online yoga class because we don't have that face-to-face interaction. So if it's possible, something that you can do that's easy and simple and makes the student feel so seen and included is to acknowledge them by name. So let's say that you're you're teaching your live yoga class. Now these are for people who are able to see their students, right? So this might not apply to all of you and it might not apply to all of your teaching. But when it's relevant, you can say, "Hey Ryan, excellent form in your plank pose." Or, "Hey Judy, you're doing a great job, just stay with it." Right? Those little words of encouragement go so far. And I remember when I was early on in my yoga practice as a student, when I would have teachers that would specifically call me out by name, whether it was with a word of praise or some feedback to help me in my posture, it felt so wonderful. It felt like I was getting that one-on-one personal attention, and that goes such a long way, right? So that's one way. Another is to use inclusive language. So unless you do have a class full of only women, you want to avoid saying things like, "Hey ladies," or "Welcome guys." Keep all of your language really inclusive so that we can make sure that we're making all of our students feel seen and valued and included. Now, next up, even if you're not able to see your students and or address them by name, it's very easy for us as teachers to acknowledge our gratitude for them being there, for them showing up today. It always is wonderful to start and or end your class with a word of encouragement, and especially just acknowledging your gratitude for their support, for them being in your class. You know, there's so many online offerings. So the fact that these students are making it to your class is amazing. It's a huge compliment for you. So let's make sure that we are in turn now giving them some of that love and appreciation that they so deserve. In addition to making our students feel seen and included while they're in class, it's equally as important, if not more so, to continue this beyond the classroom as well. And of course, in this sense, we're talking about the virtual classroom. And so whether you are able to connect with your students through social media, or if you have or would like to start an email list, these are awesome ways to stay connected with them between classes and between your time with them on the mat. What I have found works really well for overall student engagement is to offer them the opportunity to give you feedback, to ask you questions, and to even take requests for what they would like to see in your next classes. Some of my favorite things to do, and frankly, some of the way that I find the most inspiration as a teacher, is when I ask my students for requests of what they would like to see. This could be a particular pose that they would like to learn or have broken down or simply visit in class. It could be part of the body that they would like to target for strengthening, stretching, whatever it may be. It could also be a type of class, a specific format. And this is also your opportunity to let your skill set shine. So offering surveys and polls, you know, Instagram and Facebook are great with plenty of tools that you can use to create a quick survey to send out or a fun poll for students to take. People love to feel included, and they love to have their opinions heard. And so any way that you can offer them that opportunity to give you their feedback and share their opinions with you will go so far. So again, that was our first point, which is how to make your yoga students feel seen, valued, and included. All right, now moving on to our next point. This is a big one. This is a good one, a very important one that I love to discuss too. And this is how to use clear, safe, and effective cueing in your teaching. Now, cueing is a huge part of teaching yoga, regardless of where we're teaching it, but it becomes paramount to our online yoga teaching because we don't have the luxury of being in the space with the student to see their bodies and to check on their proper alignment and to make sure that they're following and picking up what you're putting down, so to speak. So when we teach online, cueing is of the utmost importance. And let's make it fun because it really can be such a blast to get really creative while maintaining very clear and concise cues. So the first goal, the first box that we really want to be able to check off here is that our students should be able to practice along with us audibly. So they should ideally be able to practice this class without having to look up all the time. Because again, if we're practicing online, we have our device set somewhere in front of our mats. And you know, if they are now facing to the side, to the back of the mat, or if they're in a posture, it's not always easy or convenient to have to turn around and look back at the screen. And so our job as the facilitator of their practice is to be as clear as possible. But enough talk about it, let's learn about it. So let's apply it to an example. Let's say I'm teaching you a pose and I say, hey, look at your foot. Well, that almost guarantees that they're going to now have to look up at the screen to see what I mean by that. Which foot, why, when, all of the factors. What if instead I say, look down at your front right foot? So now we have the direction of looking down. We have the descriptor word of it's the front foot, and then we have the added clarification of the front right foot. Now, we want to cater to every single student in the room. So we want to make sure that we're adding enough cues so that they're understanding, because down at your front foot might not click with everyone right away. Down at your right foot might take some people a minute to say, okay, left and right. So looking down at your front right foot is that added layer of security in helping to ensure that our students are all understanding exactly what we're asking of them quickly. Now, it also helps to demonstrate. So now we're kind of getting into our overarching best practices as well. But on the note of cueing, as we are telling them what to do. It also really helps to demonstrate that as well. So as we're demonstrating what it is that we're cueing and we're utilizing descriptor words in our cueing, this is that trifecta of a powerful and effective cue. It's also helpful for a very safe practice when we are giving them clear guidance and instruction to help eliminate as much as possible any potential confusion or misalignment that could arise from that confusion. Let me give a few examples. These are examples that I have heard from teachers over the years that I found to be so effective, and they really stuck out in my mind. So let's take, for example, now this is adding descriptor words with an analogy. So now we're kind of taking it to the next level of visualization as a way of verbalizing the cues most effectively. Now, we were in Warrior 2 stance when this teacher cued, now we're talking about the back foot, and she cued to act as if energetically we were opening up a pickle jar with our back foot. So imagine or even take a Warrior 2 pose right where you are, and then feel into your back foot in this Warrior 2 pose. Now, as you're in this posture and you're pressing your body weight down through the outer blade of your back foot in Warrior 2, also now energetically feel that motion of what it would be like if your back foot were opening up a pickle jar. And that energetic effect of basically just really activating the foot with a forward feeling motion without even moving the foot was very effective for me. It was a very small cue that actually changed the way that I felt into my back leg and my foundation through the back leg in that Warrior 2 stance in a very effective and visual way. And then not all analogies and not all descriptor words are going to resonate with all of us. So I always like to offer another example. Another example is being in reverse triangle pose. Now, this can be a challenging posture for many people. Oftentimes, students are unsure exactly where their hip alignment should be. And so in reverse triangle pose, a great cue that's also a visualization is to imagine there being a weight tied to your tailbone, pulling your tailbone straight down towards the mat beneath you, between your legs. So instead of having to worry about are the hips tilting towards the back, towards the front, finding a neutral ground in the middle, giving them a visual analogy will better resonate with many students and help them really understand in that moment exactly that hip alignment and alignment through their body in that pose. So now that we've talked about some methods of cueing, right, whether we are using exact languaging and or descriptive analogies to help convey what it is that we're teaching about a particular pose, we also want to consider what we're offering while we're teaching. It's very important that we offer modifications to poses when we're practicing online, because again, we're not with the students face to face to see if someone is struggling in a particular pose, if this person's body would benefit from a particular modification in a set pose. And so this is when we just want to offer them regardless. And this is going to be helpful for students in experimenting with different variations and modifications, and also just feeling what's best in their bodies. So offering variations as well to poses is a nice way to, again, getting back to our first point, make sure everyone in the room is feeling seen and supported in their practice. And also giving students permission to explore other options, to back off of a pose if it feels too challenging or intense in their bodies, or to even skip it entirely, right? So again, a common practice, a great practice in my opinion, is to remind students throughout their time on the mat with you, hey, it's okay if you need to take a child's pose. It's okay if you would prefer to completely modify this pose or to skip it and take a break. These little reminders go a long way with our online yoga students in helping them to feel seen and supported while also cueing them safely and effectively. Now, as we started to talk about a little earlier, the power of demonstrating in an online yoga class. And in our demonstration, what we're able to show is proper alignment, which can take the place of a physical adjustment or providing additional alignment cues if you're noticing that a handful of your students are out of proper alignment in a specific pose. So when we demonstrate proper alignment in an online setting, we want to be sure that we are demonstrating it physically as well as communicating that demonstration verbally, and also incorporating the use of props by simply demonstrating how to use them in, let's say, triangle pose or pyramid pose, poses that are challenging for many of us to get into, and showing that not only is it okay and you're giving permission to be using yoga props, but also how to do it, because we never want to assume that just because a student has taken a few classes before that they know how to incorporate props safely and effectively in their practice. So these go hand in hand with cueing, in that instead of simply saying, feel free to grab a block, you're also saying, and here's how to use it if you did grab it. Finally, on that same line of cueing and demonstrating poses, offer alternatives for the more challenging postures. Because again, in an online setting, even if you are calling this an intermediate vinyasa, you really can't control who is in the class and who may or may not be quite to that level. So again, by offering alternative to challenging postures, it's a great way to remain very inclusive and attentive and considerate of all of the students in your room. And on that note, as teachers, we all know this, but it's an important reminder that regardless of your experience level as a student, sometimes it is so lovely to be shown a different variation or a different pose alternative that perhaps you just never thought of before, or you had never been taught was a variation of that pose before. So it's, the potential is limitless when we start to really dig into how best show up for our students when it comes to teaching these poses and cueing them effectively. Excuse me. Final thing on the note of safe cueing is to really consider your audience. While I just mentioned that we can't always know or control the type of students we have in our class from the standpoint of their level of experience, what we can always control is the way in which that we show up for them and make sure that they're feeling supported. And so when you are considering your audience, consider also, is it impactful to offer more challenging postures? Is it in an online setting a good idea to offer inversions or more challenging postures that could create a risk for injury, especially when it's an online setting? When you're teaching in an in-person class, you can say, hey, everyone, take a moment, watch me, and then get into this pose yourself. Online, we don't know if they're doing that. And also, if they are already in the pose and then they turn to try to look at you, let's pretend they are in shoulder stand or plow pose, and then they try to turn your neck to look back at the screen, that could create a risk for injury, and that's something that we want to avoid too. So thinking about not only how you're cueing, but what poses that you are bringing in to the online setting is a really important topic just to be aware of in the back of your mind. So that is our second point again, which is how to create clear, safe, and effective cueing for your online classes. Now, here we are, we've arrived at our third and final key tenet of teaching online yoga classes effectively, and this is how to best set up for class, which has several factors. It's a factor of lighting, of framing, and also of audio. And so these are sort of the best tips, best practices for setting your class up for success. Now, as I mentioned, before we kind of get into those three key parts, the demoing of poses. When we are going to demonstrate a pose, it's important to always be prepared through the lens of the camera, right? When you arrive to teach these online classes, you want to be looking at your camera and treating it as if it were your group of students, because in this case it is. And so if you are going to teach let's see, warrior two on both sides, you want to make sure that you are setting up your mat and which side is the front of your mat so that you are showing them the first side of the pose on the side that faces the camera. So there's nothing worse than you're getting into a pose, let's say goddess, right? So a little more complicated than warrior two if you're setting it up for the first time in class, and if you're setting it up away from them, now all of a sudden you're speaking away from the camera, right? So you're speaking to the back of the room, and that might feel a little awkward for both you and your students. So keep in mind as you're setting up for class that your mat is set up in a way and the front of your mat is set up in a way that if I'm going to face this way, I want to make sure that it's my right foot forward first. So when I open into my Warrior 2 for the first time, I'm opening into it facing you, facing my students, my camera. Now, that brings up another interesting point about best practices for online teaching, and that is whether or not to mirror our students. To mirror or not to mirror, that is the question. So really, there's no right or wrong answer. It boils down to a few key factors. First, are you comfortable mirroring? If you don't have a lot of experience mirroring, then I would recommend to not try to start now, to instead practice that on your own time, practice that with some in-person classes, and perhaps build up towards mirroring if it's something that you really feel strongly that you would like to incorporate in your online yoga teaching. So again, if you're not already experienced with and comfortable with mirroring, then perhaps it's best to not mirror for your online classes. And if you're interested in my personal opinion, my opinion is either way is great as long as you are very clear in your communication about it from the start. So when your class begins, before you've even started moving, you'll tell them, okay, and for this class, I will be mirroring you. So when I say to put your left hand down, it will be my right, and I'll be doing it on the same side as you. Or if you are not mirroring, then you would say something like, as a reminder, I do not mirror. So whichever side I say is the side that you will do. So again, as long as the student is set up for the expectation of what it is you'll be teaching, then it's okay to mirror or not, as long as you remain consistent. So if, by example, the first class you did not mirror, but then your next week you decide that you're going to mirror, that might throw them off because what they're expecting is what you did the previous time. So, decide up front what you would like to do, and then ideally you can stick with it. And if not, hey, life happens. Again, now you just want to bring in that very clear communication. All right, so with that being said, if you do choose to mirror, then you want to stay consistent with it, obviously mirroring every pose throughout the entire class for every class that you teach. And for many teachers who are experienced in mirroring, it comes naturally at this point. You just know that when you say left, it's your right hand, and when you say right, it's your left hand. And then again, you just stick to it. I do find that for an online setting, it can be a little confusing to not have the teacher mirroring you. So if they're looking this way, but they said to go right, so you're this way, you might take a second to figure that out. Your students will figure it out. So either way, don't worry about it. Make your decision and own it. Okay, now that we've covered those basics, let's jump into what we initially talked about, which is lighting, audio, and framing. Lighting is key. We've all seen those dark and shadowy videos, maybe on a Skype meeting or something, and it's kind of hard to make out the person, and all of a sudden now you're kind of distracted and you're spending more time trying to figure it out or just being distracted by the poor lighting than you are focusing on the teacher and what they're teaching. So lighting is key, and it can be tricky, but we can work through it together. So first off, if you have a ring light or can afford to invest in a ring light, you can find them online or on Amazon for relatively affordable pricing, but you don't need to spend a lot of money to set up your lighting successfully. So if you don't have that lighting, what you can do in place of it is to set your camera up in front of a window, meaning the camera would be in front of the window and then you are behind the camera. So the window is lighting the set, right? Just like my lights are set up now right behind my camera, facing me. So you can set up with a window. When you film in a space, you do want to try to find your most bright and airy and open space available. Also, lots of windows. Windows go a long way. Open up all those blinds, get all the natural light pouring in that you possibly can. If you don't have a lot of natural light and or you just don't have the ability to, make that room nicely lit, lamps work great too. So grab a couple lamps and set them all up as closely around your camera as possible. And all of these will help to contribute to nice, bright lighting, which is key for your videos. Now, in addition to lighting, we also have framing, which is a big one. Framing is key because you want to make sure that your hands aren't being cut out of frame or a foot isn't being cut out of frame. So you want the whole yoga mat in your frame. In addition to that, ideally you can have your entire body in the frame, meaning if you come to the top of the mat and you bring your arms up overhead, that your arms are not being cut off. Now, if it comes down to, Ashton, should I frame the whole mat or should I cut my hands off in the video? Cut your hands off because this sounds pretty bad, right? Cut your hands off, guys. I took this online seminar with Ashton and she was telling me to cut off my hands. It got weird. No, all I'm saying is, how many times are our arms going to be overhead? Probably not as many times as we want to make sure that the yoga mat is in frame. So pick and choose your battles. But ideally, you can create enough depth in the frame that the entire body is in frame. But at the very least, your entire yoga mat. And if you're standing, your head's not being cut out of the frame either. In addition to that aspect of framing, you also want to consider the space in which and the setting in which you're filming. You want a nice, simple background. Now, obviously, I love my decorations, but you want it to be ideally not very busy and over the top, again, kind of distracting and taking away from the focus of the class. And so try to avoid framing in tight corners or in doorways or in an area that has a ton of furniture in the background, right? So a couple things hanging or set on shelves is great, but if you have now a couch and chairs and a TV and all these other things right behind your yoga mat, it might feel a little busy, like there's a lot going on for the student. So try to keep that in mind as well. Now, let's see, other things about framing is, the final thing is you want to make sure, this is actually leading into audio, which is the sound. So framing, if you have a big, beautiful, open studio space, now what we might be worried about is some echo for the audio. So audio is next. Now, as yoga teachers, we are trained to project. We know how to talk loudly and to get our point across the entire room, no matter how big it is. But the beauty of teaching online is that it's a much more intimate setting. And so you want to avoid yelling, especially if you're working with a microphone, just as much as you want to avoid whispering, especially if you're not working with the microphone. So nice, clear, projected voice coming from the abdomen is wonderful without feeling the need to yell or without falling into, I personally have a habit of getting softer and softer as we make our way into Shavasana. And so just try to set the intention to keep your audio and your volume levels steady throughout your teaching. Now, on that note, you also want to be eliminating background noise. I just learned this lesson for myself. I mean, I've learned this lesson before, but I was reminded of it today when I did an Instagram Live and I had a space heater going in the background, and it ended up being much louder than I thought it would, or that it sounded like during. And so it's little things like that to become aware of. So eliminating background noise. I put my dogs outside for this because I knew that, it only takes one bark to get it all going. So, preparing your space ahead of time. If you're filming in a yoga studio space, maybe putting a sign on the door saying, please be quiet in the lobby and please don't enter while we're in session, while we're filming in session. Little things like that to not disrupt your flow as the teacher as you're trying to teach your class. Now, in addition to that, equipment often comes up, right? So students and teachers often ask me, well, Ashton, what microphone are you using and what lighting are you using? And again, I want you to know always that you don't need to spend a lot of money to make it the quality good, right? So we can use these hacks that we've been talking about. Now, for the microphone, I am wearing a microphone today, again, because I want the audio to be as clear and crisp for you as possible. As we all have heard from either the best audio class and the worst audio class, is that audio can really make or break our experience. And so if you want to prioritize something in your online yoga teaching, I would recommend starting with a microphone. And again, a quick Google search or jumping on Amazon will reveal a lot of high quality and affordable price points for a lot of microphones out there. I have worked with both the lav mic that can clip on to a shirt or something around the top of the body, as well as a headset mic. And for filming, I do really prefer the headset mic. It just has overall turned out to be the most easy and simple microphone to work with the least amount of audio issues. So that's my 2 cents based on my experience. But again, most new smartphones have excellent camera as well as audio components built right in. So before you go out and spend a bunch of money investing in all this equipment, first experiment with what you already have and see what works really great and what you might need to be prioritizing if you do choose to invest in equipment at some point. So all of these aspects that we have covered today all contribute together to improving the quality and thereby the overall experience for your students in each and every one of your online yoga classes. And again, just to review, we went through the 3 main points of creating the most successful online yoga teaching experience. The first of which is making your students feel seen, valued, and included. The second of which is using clear, safe, and effective cueing. And then the third of which, of course, is how did I get messed up there, people? The third of which is how to best set up for class with lighting, framing, and audio. And you know what? That just brought up an amazing final point too. When you are teaching these online yoga classes, most often they are live. And when they are live, we have to treat them just as we would an in-person yoga class. We cannot control all the outside variables. You never know when you're going to, have someone walk in halfway through class, or the doorbell rings if you're filming, whatever it may be. And you know what? We just have to roll with it. And so part of the authenticity in teaching yoga is rolling with the punches, being real with it, being able to laugh at yourself when you're talking about number 2, but number 3 is what you're showing people. You just got to have fun with it, not take yourself so seriously, and just feel comfortable and confident enough in your abilities and yourself to lead with your authenticity. If you make a mistake, it's okay. People will not just forgive you, they will love you for it because it means you're human. And, if anything comes up along the way, if you have an audio issue or if something goes wrong, it's okay too. Be communicative about it. Let people know the situation, follow up if need be, and then let them know that it's all, a learning experience for everyone and that we're all continuing to learn and grow. Because as teachers, we always want to maintain that student mind and that learning mindset. And that, my friends, is exactly why you're here with me today. And again, I want to thank you so much for being here with me. I really had so much fun sharing this information with you. It's information that I am so passionate about. And as passionate as I am about teaching yoga, I am also so passionate about supporting yoga teachers in their teaching journey. So thank you so much for allowing me to be your guide in this particular journey. And I'm really looking forward to the next segment soon. See you then.
Alrighty, so how amazing was that? I am so excited that we had Ashton able to do that, and she's going to be joining us very shortly. She's been here the whole time, obviously. So she is going to set her camera up and get off mute, and we're going to do our live class. So, and thank you for all those questions. We will answer them, when Ashton gets up and running. So I also wanted to, since we're online, we're live, this happens. If there was a lag at any point in your video, if there was a lag during it, we apologize. We started a new thing where we wanted to do a pre-recorded session. And so if it lagged, we apologize. We'll fix it in the next one. So we're going to start her video. She is unmuted. And there we go.
Hello, everyone. Can y'all hear me okay? Awesome. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, That was such a wonderful first half. Thank you, like I said, for all of your questions. Awesome questions. For the remaining questions that we didn't address before our yoga practice, I will address those at the end of our physical practice, which starts right now, my friends. So make your way to your yoga mats if you're not there already. And we are going to begin our practice today in a nice child's pose. And so making your way there as you're ready, bringing your big toes to touch, spreading your knees apart, allowing your seat to rest towards your heels and extending your arms out nice and long in front of you, relaxing your forehead down towards the mat. And just begin to take some nice deep breaths here. We just went through a lot of information. And so now as we transition ourselves more into a physical practice, a physical awareness, let's just take a first few breaths here to allow ourselves that transition and to allow ourselves to drop into the physical body. Nice deep breathing here. If your forehead is connected to the mat or to a prop, perhaps you gently rock your forehead side to side, massaging the third eye center and bringing some relaxation into the body. Now, this short yoga practice will be part physical practice for you to enjoy. As teachers, it's so important that we find time to step onto the mat for ourselves. And I'll also be weaving in some information and some follow through from the information that we learned here today. So beginning right now in this child's pose, just begin to let yourself really sink into the present moment. And just take another deep and full inhale and exhale here. Very nice. Okay, now with your next breath, as you're ready, plant your palms, tuck your toes, and let's press up and back into downward facing dog. Now take a couple breaths here to find some natural movement, whatever is calling to you today. Perhaps you're bending alternate knees, lifting and lowering alternate heels to the mat. And now revisiting some of what we talked about during class, since we are in a Zoom format, then this would be a great opportunity for you when you've put your students in a pose like down dog and told them to spend a few breaths to then, as the teacher, walk over to the screen, right? So if you were able to see all of your students, you could take a moment here to call a few students out and say, hey, Kate, you're looking great in your down dog. Great to see you in class, Samantha. Thank you so much for being here, right? So already sort of thinking about opportunities that you have to leave them in a pose and to go and check on them if that's available. Okay, so take another breath here in your down dog, perhaps settling into some stillness here, connecting to your deep and full breathing. Good. Just like in a in-person yoga class, it really helps to be breathing along audibly with your students. It's a great reminder for them to continue the focus on their breathing. Now with your next breath, send your gaze forward up between your thumbs and take some baby steps all the way to the front of your mat, finding a nice forward fold. We just spent a good half hour sitting, watching, listening, and learning. So let's just warm up the body now with a few rounds of sun salutations. With your inhale breath, find a nice halfway lift, get a nice flat back. Now, another thing you want to do in your online classes is make eye contact, right? Or computer screen contact in this case. So always kind of keeping an eye on your computer, and exhale to fold. Good. And with your inhale, let's reverse swan dive. Bring your arms all the way up overhead. And exhale, hands to heart. Now, let's move ourselves through 3 rounds of Surya Namaskar A, of a short and sweet sun sal, just to, again, warm up the body, get our blood and our heart pumping, and let's begin to link our breath with our motion. So with your inhale breath, sweep your arms up overhead, and exhale, fold all the way down, forward fold. Inhale, finding your halfway lift, pressing palms into shins or thighs. And exhale, fold. This time, plant your palms, step your left foot back, step your right foot back, shift forward onto your toes, and lower down through a chaturanga push-up. Pausing at the bottom, you can always drop to one or both knees. And then with your inhale breath, release to the top of your feet, find cobra. And exhale, tuck your toes, lift your hips up and back, downward facing dog. Beautiful work, everyone. With your next breath, gaze forward and take small baby steps forward all the way into your fold. At the top of the mat, find your halfway lift. Inhale, breath. Exhale, fold. Inhale, reverse swan dive, arms all the way up overhead. Exhale, hands through heart. Last time through, just like that. Here we go. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, find your half lift. And exhale, palms plant. This time, right foot steps back first. Left foot steps back, high plank. Shifting forward onto the toes. And either taking yourself through a chaturanga or meeting us in downward facing dog. Good. Now, wherever you are, you'll notice that I spend a lot of time leading with the breath. So just pausing in your down dog here. This is how I cue a lot of the movements, right? A breath to a motion. We inhale to lift, we exhale to step through. So whether you like to cue based on the breathing or some other aspect, it's a nice way to stay consistent in the style in which you're bringing them through the poses. Good. Last time, here we go. Inhale, look forward, step or jump forward, finding your halfway lift. Inhale, breath. Exhale to fold. Doing great. And with your inhale, take your arms up, reverse swan dive, arms up overhead, and exhale, hands through heart. Good. Just take a moment here to connect to your breathing. Good. Take a moment here to just feel yourself rooted to the mat and the earth beneath you. Beautiful, everyone. Now we'll continue. So with your next breath, take your arms up overhead. Exhale, fold. Inhale, finding your halfway lift. And exhale, palms plant. Just the left foot steps back this time. Good. Pull your palms back to frame your front right foot. From here, allow your hips to drop forward and down. Lift your heart, finding a nice low lunge. Good. With your next breath, drop your back left knee down, untuck the left toes, and then rise so that we can interlace the fingers on top of the right thigh. Good. Letting your hips melt forward and down, letting your heart lift tall and proud. So with these cues, it's always helpful to offer them in 2s or 3s. Hips melting forward and down. Heart lifting tall and proud, right? So you always want to give enough for them to understand what we're asking, but not so much that they're just spending the whole class trying to follow every single guidance that we offer for them. Good. Now notice that I'm also offering the modifications to kind of add on or back off, right? In Chaturanga, there is the offer to drop the knees down or to skip it. So in this case, we can stay directly where we are in a nice low lunge, or if we'd like to move on, we're going to tuck the back left toes and then straighten and lift into the back left leg, coming into our high crescent lunge or Alanasana. Good. Now with your inhale breath, take your arms up overhead. Good. And with your exhale, we are going to open into Warrior Two. So if you're in a low lunge, go ahead and meet us in your Warrior Two. Now, here's a posture that is very common to teach in our classes and is also commonly misaligned, right? So I took this really fun rooftop yoga class last night, and I noticed a lot of students in that class did this. Right? We've probably all seen this as teachers, that lunging forward in the Warrior Two. So when we're in postures like this, thinking about how we could set them up, anticipating some of these misalignments, and address that even if we're not able to see our online students. So in my teacher's mind, the first thing I would say is, as we rise into Warrior Two, let's work first to align our shoulders over our hips. And now let's pretend as if we're practicing up against a large hutch or piece of furniture directly behind our backs. So what we'd want to be doing is leaning back enough so that our spine is gracing the back of the hutch or that piece of furniture behind us. And we're also able to rest our arms on the top of that piece of furniture. So this would help us align and understand that our torso is remaining upright and stacked above the hips, and hopefully alleviate some of this leaning forward. Good. All right. Now with your next breath, we're just going to cartwheel the hands down, framing the front right foot. We're going to step it back, and now we're going to pretend that we just came through a flow. Right? So we just did our flow, and now you're setting them up for Warrior 2 on the first side. So pretend that we didn't just do Warrior 2 on the first side. Now imagine that where my camera is where your camera is, and you set them up to come into Warrior 2 on this side first. It would be a little awkward to be standing here trying to convey all the information that we just talked about with your face away from the camera. So that's why it was beneficial that we started on this side, right? So first side, we're talking to the camera, we're talking to our students. And then on the second side, so now we are on side 2 for real this time. Now, so we can use this opportunity to kind of call it out, right? So coming into our Warrior 2 side 2, as we open our arms and find our warrior stance, we now have the opportunity to see it from the opposite side. So I love to communicate with the students and kind of bring them in, right? So now you're staring at me from the back, and you can see my adjustments of if, again, I was workshopping this leaning forward phenomena in Warrior 2, you could see more of what I'm talking about with the spinal alignment and the arms. Good. So take a few final breaths in your Warrior 2, sending your gaze out over your front left middle finger. Very nice. Now with your next breath, let's windmill the hands down to frame the front left foot. Step your left foot back, and you have the option of taking it through a flow or meeting in downward facing dog. Now, as a teacher, I also love to keep it really accessible by demonstrating the easier variation, right? So students feel that they have the permission to do that as opposed to pushing themselves to the extreme. So if I offered a chaturanga flow or meeting in down dog, I would take the meeting in down dog option. Good. So let's drop to the knees for a moment. Great work. Now, from here, we're just going to go through one more little series of postures as a way to really convey what we're talking about when it's important to cue so that students can listen and practice along with you audibly. In fact, I have met several teachers over the years who teach for audible-only platforms where it's a yoga recording. And I thought, my goodness, what a wonderful challenge for a yoga teacher to basically just talk through a whole class and to not have that convenience, that luxury of being able to demonstrate the postures and also being able to read the students in the room, right? So we're halfway there when we teach online. So when you're ready, let's come back into downward facing dog. So from your downward dog, lift the left leg up behind you, keeping your hips squared towards the mat. Now, with your next breath, look forward, and we're going to step the left foot to the outside of the left hand. We're going to angle the left toes out towards the left edge of the mat. Good. Preparing for lizard to start. So for lizard, we'll drop our back right knees down, untuck the right toes, and just breathe. For many of us, this is enough. Perhaps you're even grabbing a yoga block or two right here, which is great to place beneath your hands to kind of bring the yoga mat up to you. And as I mentioned in our workshop, this is a great opportunity to, if you had blocks, you could demonstrate that for the students. And then from here, if you would like to deepen this stretch a bit, you can gently place your left hand to the inside of your left knee and spiral your heart open over your left thigh. Good. Option to bend the back knee and reach back to grab your right foot with your left hand if you so choose, if that's available and feels good in your body today. Good. All right, so this is the first part of a 3-part little triage of poses. So from here, we're going to all place our hands back down inside the left foot, just as we started. We're going to tuck the back right toes and then pivot onto the bottom of the back right foot like a warrior 2 stance through the back right foot. Left foot remains exactly where it's been. Now from here, both of my hands are going to travel towards the right corner of the mat, getting a little kind of crooked warrior 2 lunge here. So maybe you're feeling this pull into your left hip flexor a bit, your left inner groin or hamstring. Good. So it's also helpful for your students to kind of narrate the idea of what this pose is doing. So also not telling them this is what you'll feel and where, because every body is different, as we know as yoga teachers, but to say, you know, this is perhaps where you'll feel the stretch. And if not, perhaps you try to shift your hips back a bit and bring a little more weight into your front foot, right? So subtle cues like that to help them kind of feel the sensation that you're going for. Okay, now here comes the third and final part of our fun little triage flow here, where we'll replace the hands back to where they started once more. Pivot onto the ball of your back right foot, and then here comes the change. So listen carefully. We're going to pivot onto the outer blade now of our back right foot, preparing for side plank on the right side. So when you're ready, your left arm will lift, your left leg will stack on top of your right leg, or maybe it lifts, or maybe alternately you drop onto your bottom right knee for added support. Good. And change. Beautiful work, my friends. We'll come out of this pose by planting the left palm, pivoting onto the ball of the left foot, and then simply tucking the right toes, coming into plank pose. Let's go for side 2, shall we? Okay, so from your plank pose, let's press it back to down dog. Right leg lifts, right hip remaining squared to the floor, to the mat beneath you. And then send your gaze forward and step your right foot to the outside of the right hand. Good, right toes facing outward. And then as you're ready, we'll slowly release to the top of your back left knee. Nice. Untucking the left toes and breathing into your lizard stretch. Taking a few deep breaths here. And I also want to acknowledge another aspect of teaching online, which is that authenticity component that we talked about right at the end of our workshop today. So the beauty and the importance as teachers of taking other classes and experiencing other teachers is to observe what resonates with you and what doesn't. So part of this class for you today is to witness what you're really enjoying and taking away from my cueing, my overall teaching, and what you're thinking to yourself, ooh, this type of approach would really benefit my teaching, as well as the things that you're thinking, nah, maybe not so much. And that's okay too, right? But this is the important practice of awareness around what works and what doesn't. Again, on side 2, if you would like a little more, the right palm can gently press the inside of the right knee, and slowly we'll change. We'll come back through center, both hands down, tucking the back left toes, lifting the back left leg. Next step is to pivot onto the bottom of the left foot, again, finding that warrior 2 stance through the back leg. And then your hands reach towards the left front corner of the mat. Good. Remember those extra cues to help you kind of find that sensation in your body. Perhaps you try sending your hips back another inch or so. Good. Really sending some extension through the back left leg, pressing down through the outer blade of your back left foot. So playing with those subtle cues, the subtle nuances that a cue can help a student really locate in their own body. All right, final step, my friends. We're going to come back through center, palms planting inside of the right foot, pivoting onto the ball of the left foot to start, preparing for left side plank. Next step is to pivot onto the outer blade of the left foot, bringing your weight into the left palm, and then reaching the right arm skyward, lifting your hips. Right leg is stacked on top, or for a little more stability, you can stack your right foot in front of your left foot. Finally, option to move on by lifting your top right leg for 3, 2, and 1. Slowly come out of it, coming back through your plank, pressing back through your downward facing dog. Let's take a deep inhale through the nose together. An open mouth, sigh it out. One more deep inhale through your nose, this time lifting high onto the balls of your feet. And with your exhale, knees to mat, seat to heels, ending our practice the way we began in a nice child's pose, forehead down to the mat, and just taking a few nice deep breaths here. Very nice, everyone. All right, let's take another deep, full breath in and out. And then as you're ready, you can gently press yourself up to seated. Take your time to get there. And then as you're ready, we'll just have a few minutes right at the end here for some questions.
Ashton,
Okay.
that was
all right, everyone. So thank you so much for being here with me and for practicing with me and sharing a part of your day. With the few minutes that we have left, I would love to address some of the questions that were asked right as we were getting into class. Now, let's see. The first one I received is, I'm curious, from Cindy. I'm curious if you teach hybrid classes online and students with you in the studio. You know what? Honestly, Cindy, I have not, but I do see a lot of those offerings these days. And like you said, it's something that you've avoided feeling like it's too much to handle. I think it's wonderful to know what your strength is and do what that is and what kind of feels best for you. It could go either way. You know, a lot of studios are offering these hybrid classes. It's a great, opportunity for teachers. It's also not for everyone. So I think it's really up to your decision and your discretion there. Do you use music in your classes? I have and I have not. It really depends on how you're teaching these classes. If you are putting your classes on YouTube, you have to be so careful about copyright with music and licensing. Even when I have received permission from the artist to put a track on my classes, I have had YouTube send me notices and ask to take it down. So tread very carefully there. There are some licensed music libraries that you can pay for a monthly or annual subscription to. And with a Google search, you can pull them up. Now, as a reminder, I also produce content for Yogi approved classes. And sometimes we have used artlist.io. That is a licensed music library that is great, but there's a ton of yoga exclusive music libraries that I would even recommend more. I just honestly don't remember their names, but there's a lot of them out there. Let's see. Samantha wanted to know about the difference between mics and how to incorporate music when using a laptop. So again, it depends on which platform you're using, Samantha. Zoom is actually really easy to integrate music with, so that's easy if you're using Zoom. Another option is you can just simply play your music in the background. If you have a mic, the mics are sensitive enough to pick those up. And it really just takes some kind of playing around with to see what works best for you. Mic differences do vary a lot, you guys. A headset mic is really nice for teaching because, again, obviously it moves with you. It's easy. They've gotten way better over the years, I can tell you that much. Let's see. Okay. Okay, awesome. So I think that we ran through all of our questions, you guys, and I am going to run because I actually have another Instagram live. If you would like to join me for that as well, it's on the Yogi approved Instagram starting in about 30 seconds. And thank you so much again for everyone who joined me today. Please connect with me. I'm on social at I am Ashton August. You also will see me with beYogi, of course. We would love to see you for the next 2 sessions. This was a fantastic first session. The next 2 are going to be just as great, just as amazing and fun. So please reach out, connect with us if you have follow-up questions that you think of after the fact. And otherwise, I will look forward to seeing you March 30th. Yes. Awesome.
Yes,
Okay,
March 30th.
thank you so much again, everyone. So grateful for you. And thank you so much again, Lizzie at beYogi, for hosting. You're such a gracious host, and it's lovely to be here.
Alrighty, bye everyone. You can
Bye.
go, you can go. Just real quick while Ashton leaves, you can go.
Okay.
She can't hear me. Real quick before you leave, make sure to sign up for the next 2 sessions, March 30th and April, I believe, 13th. So you can register at the link in our bio on Instagram. We've sent emails about it, and I will include the registration links in our upcoming email with the recording that will include everything there. So how to connect, how to register, and really any other information. Thank you so much all for joining, and check us out at beyogi.com and or yogiapproved.com. And we love this session. So if you have feedback, definitely send me an email at lizzie@beyogi.com and we will go from there. So thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day. All right. See ya.